Hello, I'm Ian Guest. I'm going to be teaching a course on human rights, protection and war, and that's number 688. Well, several important takeaways, I think. First and foremost, I think we need to understand the threat, the challenge to protection. And this comes from failed states, it comes from the emergence of non-state actors like the Islamic State. State security is certainly under threat. It also comes from the evolution of war, from the set-piece battles of World War II, which were relatively easy to monitor, to today's conflicts, the global war on terror, cyber war, which are much harder to control. Secondly, and probably the most important takeaway, is to understand human rights, the tools of human rights law, and the institutions that protect and enforce human rights, and international humanitarian law. So I say those are the two major takeaways, learning objectives for this class. Well, why is this important? I think you just have to look at the newspapers or the tablet to understand we are living through this incredible refugee crisis, more refugees internally displaced than ever since they started counting. We've got civilians under threat from Nigeria in the west to Afghanistan in the east. We've got prisoners being beheaded, the use of poison gas in the Syrian war. I mean, these are enormous challenges. And I think this class is going to be useful and important to any student of international security studies, international relations, but also to people who are interested in current affairs. It'll be topical. We'll be dealing with issues that are on the front page every day. And in fact, we'll start every class with a review of the previous week and the developments as they affect the issues we'll be studying. Well, I'm a former journalist by profession. I started work as a reporter for the International Herald Tribune and The Guardian in Geneva. I traveled to many of the countries that we'll be reviewing in class. I also studied human rights, or I reported on human rights at the United Nations and on refugee protection. And I wrote a book about the disappearances in Argentina. So I had a strong grounding in human rights. I then moved into the United Nations. I worked for 2 peacekeeping missions in Cambodia and Haiti, and worked on others, Rwanda, Bosnia. I now run a small non-profit called the Advocacy Project. We support community-based advocates around the world, and many of them are working in post-conflict countries. In fact, we have a very large project at the moment in Mali, where we're taking women in who've been raped during the war and helping them to recover. So I am steeped in this issue of protection and the connection to conflict. I find it very interesting. And I'm also a big believer in the role of the non-governmental organization and civil society, and that's going to feature throughout our class. So the class is going to be structured as follows. We'll start off with 4 or 5 classes that review the tools. We'll go through the evolution of human rights, humanitarian laws, as I was talking about earlier, and we'll get a really firm understanding of the system, the international system. Then we'll go on to a series of really difficult and challenging protection crises. We'll look at the refugee crisis, obviously. We'll look at child soldiers. We'll look at women in war and the use of rape as a weapon of war. We'll look at detention, the use of drones. These are all very, very tough, and they really are posing a huge challenge, I think, to protection and to human rights. And we'll round off the class with 3 or 4 classes on new approaches. We'll look at the International Criminal Court, transitional justice, truth commissions, tribunals. And we'll end up with a class on non-violent resistance and pacifism, and ask whether that is a viable or indeed a moral option to this sort of crisis that we see in the world today. In terms of what I expect from students, everybody will give a class presentation on a theme. That will be a major product. There'll be no final exam, and I want people to write a take-home essay at the end of the course. I will also be grading Blackboard contributions. Blackboard is a wonderful tool for helping to keep discussions going, good discussions, and also giving people an opportunity to speak their piece, which they may not have had during class itself. I'll be posting a syllabus quite soon, probably a summary syllabus and then a larger syllabus, obviously, before the end of the year. By way of preparation, I would just urge people, look at the news, consult newspapers. We'll also be referring to websites, and I will certainly list some very important websites, obviously Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, in the syllabus. But the final takeaway really is to watch the news. There's so much stuff going on at the moment, the refugee crisis in particular. The more you can look at that, the better prepared you'll be for this course. And I think it's going to be a very interesting course. I've taught it a couple of times now, and the reaction was extremely positive. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.